I'm here with our friend Alex Frank, and we had a quarterback leave the team, reportedly, not Chandler Morris, so don't freak out too much, but I think there is some reason for concern. We'll break that down. Also, a new commit, and stuff finally hit the fan with realignment, and we have a whole new Big 12. So all that coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe on YouTube. I've seen some increase on YouTube subscribers recently. I think people are excited for football season, which is great. We are too. And sitting beside me here is Alex Frank. Alex is a college sports enthusiast, TCU grad, TCU enthusiast. And he's been on the show before, friend of the show. You see his Twitter handle on the bottom there, at Alex_HornyToad. And first sort of off the beaten path question for you, Alex.
Yeah.
So I wore this hat on Friday. And I think I'm right in saying this. Alex he has some Ohio State ties in his family. I believe your sister went there. Is that correct, Alex?
And her fiance.
Okay. So I didn't really think about this. This is my hometown, McGregor, Texas. I played football there. I was in local radio for a while, and a very nice person custom made this hat for me because I would talk about being from McGregor. And some people on the YouTube comments Friday were like, why the heck are you wearing a Michigan hat on a TCU podcast? And I thought, wait, does this look like a Michigan logo? And I sort of see it now that they've said that. But Alex, does this look like a Michigan hat to you? Was that your first thought?
I thought it was a Michigan hat immediately. I didn't say anything.
Okay. So all right, well I'll have to retire this hat after the show.
The same exact logo.
Okay.
Same exact logo.
It makes sense now that somebody pointed out, but it's one of those things like I've lived in this small town for pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just I've seen it my whole life, and I've been like, oh yeah, that's McGregor, Block M. Yeah. But I get why people would associate it with Michigan. But anyway,
you got to represent your hometown for sure.
Yeah, you do. Sure. I mean, it's in the arsenal. I don't break it out a ton, but I'll probably retire it after this broadcast today.
No,
I don't. We'll see.
Say they're your secondary team.
We'll see how it goes. But Alex is with us, and we have kind of breaking news. So Jeremy Clark, who does a great job covering the team for 247 Sports, he broke this Saturday. He said that Chance Nolan is no longer with the program, and if you don't know who that is, Chance Nolan transferred in from Oregon State this offseason. He was, supposed to be the number 2 quarterback, either him or Josh Hoover. There was even some thought that maybe he could push Chandler Morris a little bit as the starter. Had some experience coming from Oregon State. Alex brought up a good point last time we talked that Pro Football Focus had some interesting numbers about his ability to push the ball down the field, and he had a good arm. Well, he was here for, 2 practices. I think kind of saw the writing on the wall, I guess decided to leave. But Alex, this sort of throws a wrench in things. I guess first off, your thoughts on him departing. And then secondly, now Josh Hoover at the moment, as we record this, is your number 2 QB. And I think that would make most people uncomfortable going into the season.
Yeah, exactly that. I don't feel comfortable with Josh as our backup. It's a shame. Chance has a lot of talent, and it's a tough loss because, I mean, as you just said, the PFF metrics really speak for themselves. I mean, he has experience, and you've harped on his experience so much, but it really can't be understated. So yeah, it's a big loss, but there's not anything we can do except try to keep Chandler injury proof. I mean, Kaz does a good job at that, supposedly.
Yeah, he does. I mean, I think I was surprised when they landed him because of his experience that you discussed there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like we sort of discussed this off air, but I believe maybe the hardest job in college football right now as a coach is keeping multiple competent quarterbacks on the roster, because it's not like any other position. I mean, one guy's going to play, and if you're not the starter, then you're most likely not going to play unless there's an injury. And there's countless examples of guys getting hurt. We can obviously go back to last year with Max taking over. So I feel like to a certain extent, TCU fans are a little spoiled from last season having the options at quarterback. But I mean, I would even go back to the Walker Howard situation, who TCU was heavy after him. He ends up at Ole Miss. Sawyer Robinson, who they were going after, he ends up at Baylor. And I think NIL was part of that. I definitely feel like in the Walker Howard instance, that was NIL. But with Sawyer, like, I mean, unless Baylor is packing some money that I don't know about, I feel like that was just, he's looked at the Blake Shapen situation and said, I think I have a chance to play there. And so I don't know what they do now, Alex, but it's just really difficult to maintain depth at that position specifically because of, the constraints of only having one player on the roster. And I guess they'll attempt to go add somebody, but at this point, I just don't know who you're getting that has any experience. You know what I mean?
No, for sure. And I don't know the nuances of the transfer portal as well as you probably, but I thought it's closed. But I know that once you enter, you can technically add whoever you want so long as they're in there. So I don't know what that market looks like, but as you just said, I'm sure it's not ideal. So yeah, it's kind of a tough situation. But on the bright side, we do have Kaz, and he does a good job with the athletes. And Chandler is allegedly put on some weight, so that might help a little bit. But still, it's a big loss. And I got to say, I said this off camera and not trying to start anything, but it's very disappointing. As former athlete, it's like kind of unfair to your teammates in a way, like kind of abandoning your teammates. You went through spring ball, and now you're kind of you started practice, and now you kind of see the way the depth chart lines, and you don't view it as ideal for yourself, so you dip. I'm not a fan of that mentality. I understand that mentality, but as you said, with NIL and just blatant unstable nature of being a quarterback in college, it's like, how do you stop this from happening? The answer is you don't really.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Right. I get the thought process. I guess there's two factors to that. One, I guess Chance could just be like, I'm done with football in general, right? Yeah. He's coming off a neck injury. Maybe he practiced a few times and said, this is not what I want to do anymore. I think also, I understand his decision, but I don't. There's still time. He could go somewhere, but where are you going to go, 3 days into fall camp that would put you in a better situation than you're in with TCU? I mean, unless you're going to dip down to the FCS level or something like that, I can't think of many quarterback desperate places where you would have a chance to compete for the starting job. Alex, were you a student during the Alex Delton year, like the Max Duggan's freshman season, when he and Delton were trading series and kind of going back and forth?
That was 2018, right?
Yes, 2018, 2019, one of those. 2019. It's 2019.
With Robin. Yeah, because
It was the year after Sean Robinson.
Okay, I was there 2019. Yeah, I started in 2019. So yeah.
So it kind of reminded me. Delton was at K-State, and then he was going to go to UTEP, and sort of at the last minute, because TCU needed a QB, they went and got him, and he was trading reps back and forth. Max was a starter, and then Max got hurt during the Oklahoma State game.
Right.
And that week, the week of the Baylor game in Waco, Delton just left. I mean, he just packed up and was like, I'm good. And so it sort of reminded me of that situation. But it's just hard to get guys that are, committed when this is the world of college football that you talked about. One name I will throw out there he's on the roster as a walk-on.
Okay.
Grant Tisdale. And so Grant played at Allen. He was a 4-star recruit. Now, career has not been very decorated. He started his career at Ole Miss, played a few seasons there, transferred to Southeast Louisiana, and is now at TCU. And so he's on campus. He hasn't played much in his career. His number's 26, which tells me that he's probably a scout team guy. That's my guess. Is he's here as dude that could give them a look. But that would be my best guess as of today. If you need, break glass in case of emergency, that could be your everything goes wrong, could be your quarterback. But it's a thin depth chart. And I don't know, if Chandler goes down, obviously there's a lot of things that could go wrong. I really can't think of what the floor for this team would be at this point if he couldn't play most of the season, because I just don't know a lot about Josh Hoover and what he could bring to the table.
I feel
with this
extremely uncomfortable with Josh Hoover as the backup. Josh, if you're listening, prove me wrong. Invitation. But yeah, this Grant kid, I mean, he was a legit 4-star guy coming out of high school. And yeah, that's kind of exciting, even though he is very old, it looks like. But yeah, that seems like the right option in an emergency situation. The thing about Josh, though, is when you're looking at, I know not a lot of people in our fan base put a premium on the stars and ratings or whatever, but he was probably the 85th best quarterback in his class, and he had an 85-star metric rating on 3. Just makes me kind of uncomfortable, just given that that's very low, 3-star. So yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go. You would know better than me, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Right. I mean, Josh was headed to Indiana before Sonny Dykes kind of took him with him as, he came over from SMU. So not the most impressive offer list. I will say he ran an offense at Rockwall Heath that was pretty similar to what they're doing from a tempo standpoint.
Okay.
It was his head coach was part of the Bryles coaching tree. So I think he has some familiarity with that. And I know he had a good spring, but nobody expected him to be playing as a sophomore, right?
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. So if he ends up as your starter, that's an issue, but we'll see who they bring in. I mean, I don't think it's
Jaden Rashada.
Yeah, Jaden Rashada, that's another name. I mean, they went hard after quarterback this offseason, and
that would have been so clutch right now.
Yeah. They missed out on a few guys, and then they ended up with Nolan, who seemed like a good fit, but it didn't work. And I don't get the sense, Nolan was running with the third team. I think that was more first few days of practice. Josh had sort of earned the benefit of the doubt with what he did in the spring. He has a better feel for the offense. But maybe they really do have a feel for what he can do, and they didn't see the need to really rush it. But
no, and sorry to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
Your defense, you are from Texas and you understand how big high school football is. The coaches, and I just don't. So I trust your input on that, and I could totally be underselling Josh Hoover. So yeah, I don't know the high school pipeline in Texas really that well. I kind of see the tape, and I look at the the rating. But yeah, I know that a lot of people that are Texans know high school ball really well. And so, yeah, like he could be a stud.
Well, I'll say this, and then we'll switch gears. I think he could be a guy that could go out there and have a good grasp of the offense, make some throws, not kill you. I feel like Chance Nolan was a player that, could possibly win some one-on-one battles with his arm. I don't know if Josh Hoover has that ability, right? So that to me is the big separator is you had a backup that had the arm talent and the ability to come in and, possibly win you a game, right? I don't know if Josh could do that. I think there's a way they could set him up with a game plan to be successful. But bottom line is now there is more of a premium on you better keep Chandler Morris upright. Yeah. And I would imagine that coaching room, as much as Kendall Briles loves to run the quarterback and likes to use that as another way to confuse defenses and have defenses account for another person on the offense, I would think Sonny Dykes is telling him, hey, we might have to cut back on the carries this year. Like we can't have a lot of designed QB runs with what we got. But
do we know that he's gone for sure? Is he in the portal or?
I mean, I haven't seen anything announced publicly. He was on the roster as of yesterday, so I guess there is a slim chance that he could still be there.
He would have been in the portal, so that's why I'm curious. So if he's not in the portal, that means he's done with football, which is a completely different factor. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation. I don't know what his plan is, but word is that he has left the team. And again, that was from Jeremy Clark from 247 Sports. Yeah. So when we come back, we'll talk about a new commit for the 2024 class. We'll do that next. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. I do want to talk about, there it is, LinkedIn jobs, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. If you're looking for work, LinkedIn is a place to go. And if you are hiring, if you're in the business of hiring people for your small business or for a big company, LinkedIn is a great place to start. You can go to linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege and post your job for free. Talent acquisition is the name of the game. My friend Alex here has been through a very grueling interview process through a lot of different jobs through the time he's been doing this podcast with me. And LinkedIn is a great place to find talented people like Alex, who are very smart and can do great things for your company. Again, that's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. It's the place to go if you are hiring, and they're a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So it's been a big week for recruiting for TCU. They've landed 5 players. The latest, LaDainian Fields, officially announced his commitment over the weekend. Fields is from Oklahoma City. He's listed as an athlete. It looks like this is another corner that they would be adding. Good size at 6'1", 170. Offer list, UTSA, Army, Kent State. The only Power 5 offers that I see, Washington and Washington State at the moment. He's a 3-star on the Rivals Network, not ranked on On3, not currently ranked on 247. I would imagine with his commitment, he would get some sort of ranking from those industry providers soon. But seems like they're, chasing after another guy with high upside. Alex, I know you study this stuff pretty closely, star ratings, metrics, that type of thing. They've gone an interesting direction here the last few weeks with the type of players that they are adding. Do you still feel pretty good about this 2024 class and what it could be when the dust settles on signing day in December?
Yeah, that's kind of a difficult question to answer. So I'd say, how do you define a good signing class, right? So I think what's realistic this year is not top 20. It's not going to happen unless we get Colin Simmons somehow, which is just not going to happen. Sorry, guys. Not
he announced his top 4 and TCU's not in there. So unless the biggest surprise in the world is coming, I don't think that's going down.
So Yeah, I'm not personally worried because we had such a solid class last year. I will be worried if this season is kind of a flop and it doesn't pick up in November, because a lot of the big time commitments we got last year were in the month of December and November. And part of that was, I mean, Brian Carrington was really solid for us as a recruiter, but also the fact that we were having a really good season helps, and there was some respect put on our name. But I think 2025 will look pretty solid. I would venture to say top 15 could be realistic if this is a good season. So I'm not worried, because I know that if we have a good season and the NIL is picking up slowly but maturely, it'll be all right. Everything looks fine. But I know what you're getting at, and yeah, where we sit right now doesn't make me feel comfortable.
Yeah, that 2023 class ended up being really solid. Like from a ranking perspective, 23rd on 247, 19th on 3. So I mean, we're talking about like a top 20 class nationally, which is fairly crazy. I think part of this too is, I had somebody comment last week, 3 stars, 3 stars aren't going to win you a national championship. We saw what Georgia did last season, the TCU in the national championship game. I totally get that. And I think that should be the goal. I think it depends on what your expectations want to be. I mean, I feel like they definitely have a chance to be the class of the Big 12 when it comes to recruiting in the new look Big 12, even though it is sort of interesting with Arizona and Arizona State and Utah coming in, and Tech, Tech is throwing out some serious cash. They have people that are backing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they'll ever make that huge jump. I'm not sure what that looks like.
I think they can.
You think they can? We'll expand on that a little bit more, because I'd love to hear. Yeah, I'd love to hear just your thoughts on the uptick there.
Sure. I've kind of mentioned it on the show, but when did you graduate? Just curious.
2015. Okay. Spring of 2015.
Okay. I would argue that it has changed a lot since you graduated in terms of the national reputation. I think you'd agree. The national reputation has skyrocketed since 2000, and not just academically, but just generally, and pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into a brand new med school. And that is funded 100% by donors, big money donors. And the fact remains that there is substantial money on campus that attends the school, but it doesn't go to NIL. And it's definitely there. Conversations are going to have to happen, but like, we can definitely be where I think where SMU is right now. And like, don't be triggered, guys. I'm using them as a great example. They are a G5 school who are getting very solid recruits who logically no one should be touching SMU, but they are getting funding to get these recruits. And the fact is that it's kind of impressive given how crappy of a program they have. So like, the actual donors, and in comparison to how much money there is between TCU and SMU, it's not a big difference. And the student body, not a big difference, except that one is a little more showy and the other is not. But if we can pour some of that in, we'll be okay. I can definitely see us taking the jump. I don't buy into this notion that we're just because we have a small alumni base means that will never be there. It just makes no sense to me, given that there are a few billionaire alumni and there are a lot of big money donors. And it's frustrating to me to hear that kind of thinking, because I think it's just kind of silly.
Yeah, and I mean, I know the Flying T Club is really starting to get more creative with getting donors, having programs to sort of maximize those donations. And again, yeah, LaDainian Fields, I mean, good athlete, great size. One thing I really like about Joe Gillespie and his philosophy, long, rangy corners, like guys that are physical and have NFL traits, which is what you want,
Sure.
especially in a league that's going to change a lot over the next few seasons. So that's your latest commit, and we'll see. We'll see once those guys get ranked what things look like.
Yeah.
But they've definitely kind of gone a different direction here in the last few weeks with the type of players that they're chasing after.
And I didn't really get into him, but I'd say I agree with everything you're saying. I've watched some tape before I hopped on, and yeah, he's got size. He looks like a good athlete and fairly twitchy.
Yeah.
So he should fit in really well. And I'm more speaking about the future.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What that could look like.
Yeah, this is more of a big picture discussion, which is great. And we'll sort of continue that theme next. I'll tell you who's in the Big 12 when we come back, because if you haven't been near a computer lately, you might not know. And we'll talk with Alex, because Alex has some good perspective on Brett Yormark and sort of what he's doing, how he's working things behind the scenes. We'll do that next on Lockdown Horned Frogs. All right, so if you've been following the show lately, Big 12 first added Colorado, which would put them at 13 teams starting in 2024. And then when I stopped recording and posted an episode on Friday, it was trending towards Arizona, also joining the league. That eventually happened. And there were a lot of things that happened on Friday. There was a ton of back and forth. But the Cliff Notes version is, at one point, it looked like the Pac-12 might stay together. Oregon and Washington were saying, yeah, we could stick around. They jumped to the Big 10. The Big 12 ended up adding Arizona State, Utah, and Arizona. And so 4 new members starting in 2024, Colorado, Arizona State, Utah, the 4 corner schools in the Pac-12. Not sure what's going to happen to the Pac-12. They might end up collapsing entirely. They might merge with the Mountain West. But Brett Yormark got it done. I mean, he came in kind of a swashbuckling guy, like very confident, and he's done it. Like he took down the Pac-12. Not him necessarily single-handedly, but he outmaneuvered George Glykoff, added 4 of these schools. And so, Alex, I know you have followed this closely, just kind of his dealings. You live and work in the marketing world, the business world. What has been so impressive to you about Brett Yormark and kind of how he has handled this situation over the past calendar year?
Yeah, I'd say, like, as a consultant, it's really fun to watch, because this is what you do. You solve problems and you broker deals. And he's just really, I said this to you over text, and it really should be stated. His last job was as COO of Rock Nation. And for people who listen to rap, that's Jay-Z's record label. So his last boss was Jay-Z. Really can't be understated how good of an experience that is for a guy coming in. Like, that is such a successful company.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's been extremely savvy in how he's dealt with this. Just from the get-go, he targeted the 4 corner schools. He made that abundantly clear. But just backtracking, what he did, which was extremely smart, was he knew that we were entering a very unstable time. Everyone knew that in 2022. It was an extremely unstable period because USC and UCLA had made the jump, and the Pac-12 and the Big 12 were in precarious situations for different reasons. Big 12 trying to deal with, okay, how should we deal with losing Texas and Oklahoma? How do we fill that void while securing our future? And then with the Pac-12, they kind of banked on this notion that the streaming market would be 100% solidified by 2023, 2024. That was really lofty thinking. I think in 5 to 6 years, it'll probably 100% be there, and you'll see the Big 12 kind of maneuver that with ESPN, and you'll see that with just major TV networks are going to transition to a streaming model, but that's not really what's going on here. And so by the Pac-12 kind of banking on that, they weren't proactive in acting first, because they viewed it as foolish, because they said, hey, there's clear market value if we just wait it out. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the case. And so what Yormark did was he secured the future of the Big 12, because to credit Bob Bowlesby, I mean, like, he was kind of the most boring commissioner ever, but he added 4 schools that create value, genuinely create value. And then what Yormark did is he negotiated a media deal, and one that was generally very good. I think it's like $32.7 million per annum per school. And yeah, so there's only so much money in the pie. ESPN is dealing with financial issues, and everyone knows that, but it really goes to show that, when the Pac-12 tries to negotiate with ESPN, it's like, that's not their main priority, especially if the market isn't there for them to just throw cash at that conference. It doesn't make sense. And so another thing he did was, when he poached Colorado, he let leak that he was having conversations with Oregon and Washington. That kind of forced the hand of the Big Ten commissioner to have substantive conversations. And keep in mind that the old Big Ten commissioner is now with the Bears in administrative role, and so he's no longer there. So the Big Ten commissioner had to evaluate Oregon and Washington as brand new entities. And so he was forced to act because of that. And then Brett Yormark used that as leverage to create more instability and uncertainty within the Pac-12, because the Big Ten was like, oh, well, we need to act because this is leaking. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, Big Ten acted first, and the goal all along was the 4 corner schools. So by taking those 2 schools, got to the Pac-7, and so there's so much uncertainty and instability there that Utah, Arizona State, and Arizona in unison were like, all right, let's move. And so it was just amazing maneuvering and great business strategy all around, because he was able to leverage and outmaneuver both George Kliavkoff from a negotiation standpoint, but also the Big Ten commissioner just from a strategizing viewpoint as well. It was just really, if you're planning on looking at getting an MBA, guys, like, look at what he just did as your first intro to how it works, because it's really phenomenal job.
Yeah, I mean, that's great perspective. It is fascinating to kind of watch how he did that in a way. And, Utah and Arizona State, 2 schools that really kind of came kicking and screaming, but the financials were just so obviously in the Big 12's favor that they finally had to say, okay, well, this is the way that we have to move now. So really cool stuff. And before we go, I did want to get your thought on this, because we talked about this he's thought about UConn a lot, and I know, like, he's he did the event at Rucker Park with the basketball coaches. He's an East Coast guy. Like he sees the value there. What do you see in UConn that maybe some of us don't? Because I've been kind of skeptical of it, but I know you see opportunity there that from a marketing standpoint and business standpoint, that'd be really helpful for the league.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real. None of us like realignment. Like no one likes it except if you're a very large state school.
Right.
Because it destroys the regionality, and regionality is a huge component of what makes college football unique, and also the marquee matchups. So we have to understand that, yes, while this sucks, we're not going back, at least right now. TV executives want to test a new model. I think it's really crappy, and I've said so multiple times, but it is what it is. I understand it from a business perspective. As a fan, I find it horrifying, honestly. So it's difficult. With that said, you have to understand where your mark is going with this. And so I understand the skepticism, given that Rutgers, there was a similar kind of vibe when everyone was talking up Rutgers when they joined the Big Ten. It's different, I would say, because there's a strong alumni presence in UConn with Boston, Connecticut, obviously, that goes without saying, and then New York. And so, like you said, he's an East Coast guy, Yormark, and he understands that while you're not going to capture the entirety of those markets, you will capture like 20, 25%, give or take. And that in of itself is more valuable than, Provo, Utah, honestly, like 20% of New York and Boston. Like it's not comparable. And so just from that vantage point, it's a really smart move. And then you also expand into the Eastern time zone. So you have people in New York and Boston and Connecticut talking about the league, which increases exposure, visibility, and brings more money along with it, aside from the TV. And then obviously from a basketball ad, it's good, but it's not about basketball. A lot of people are saying it's because of basketball. It's not about basketball. It's because of the associated media markets. And so that's why it's a great ad. That's why San Diego State, I know you and I were talking off camera about San Diego State. That would be a phenomenal ad. San Diego market, so valued. It's like cannot be understated. And so if you got into California and New York, you would have every single time zone, not the, marquee mountain time zone Pacific time that Arizona does for college football. They're on mountain time. They're not Pacific time. I know they do Pacific time for game day. It does not count. But if you got California and you got New York, like that's crazy to me how some people, don't see the big picture of that, because I know it sucks, guys, but it's going to be so hard not to go back. And if we want this league to not only survive, but thrive, these are moves, calculated moves that we have to entertain.
Yeah, I like it. Good stuff from Alex today. Alex, as always, thank you for joining the show, man. This is good. You can find him on Twitter at Alex_HornyToad. We talked some fall camp stuff. We talked 2024 commits and, business and realignment life. And so that's all good. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.